Well, all right, let's bring in Kaladin. Hey, Kaladin, how you doing?
Good. So I actually like wrote down the question that I had from the other stream because I was really nervous. So I wanted to ask you about. Sorry, my cat.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you about how exactly we, given the state of the current world, like the version of capitalism that we practice now, how exactly are we going to get to a socialist utopia? Because I really think that capitalism, um, it fulfills like an urge that we have to amass stuff. So we always want to get more stuff, and that is something. It's like I don't know if it's a biological thing, but having having a lot of things is a way to attract a mate. So how exactly are we going to get rid of all of the politicians who have all the stuff and share it amongst everybody because they have so much power? And I know we have more, like we have more people, but if you propagandize people for years and years and years, they don't know their power, which is exactly what is happening now. So basically I'm wondering, like, can you regulate capitalism? Can it be practiced effectively, or must it be abolished completely? And then who would make those regulations, and how can you make sure that everybody gets a piece of the pie? Because I believe in socialism. I think that it's a great goal to have, but people suck. And
Sure.
maybe I'm just being pessimistic, but I
No,
really need to know your thoughts.
it's fine. This is kind of the way, this question reflects the way we're taught about socialism in the United States. I was taught in school. I remember I had a teacher who actually said that, she said, well, what if I just gave everyone in the class a C? That would be socialism, right? Because, if you get an A, you work hard, you get an A. And if you don't work hard, you get an F. But if I just gave everyone a C, that would be socialism. Or I was taught socialism means everyone gets paid the same wage. And this is obscuring what the whole thing is about. The problem with capitalism is that capitalism is a system of production organized for profit. It's, under capitalism, goods are produced for profit, right? Under capitalism, we don't have houses because people need a place to live. We have houses so landlords and bankers can make money off of them. We don't have, food so that people can eat it. We have food so that, big box stores and agribusiness corporations can make money off of it. Capitalism is production organized for profit. And one of the problems with capitalism is that the more efficient production becomes under capitalism, the better technology gets, the better they get at producing products, the fewer people they need to hire. And as a result of hiring fewer and fewer people, poverty results from abundance, right? That people get poorer as a result of technology advancing. And eventually people can't buy back the products that are being produced. And you have what's called a glut, and it's overproduction, where they produce so much stuff and people are starving. We talk about, the coal miner's riddle. This coal miner, his son says to him, why is it so cold? And he says, because I can't afford any coal to heat the home with. And he says, why can't you afford any coal? Because I lost my job at the coal mine. Why did you lose your job at the coal mine? Because there's too much coal, right? And that capitalism creates this situation where the more wealth you create, the poorer people get, right? And the only way to resolve that is to have production not be organized for profit, is to have the banks and the factories and the major centers of economic power functioning according to a central plan, a predetermined plan. So that they're not functioning according to the chaos of the market, and having society control the means of production, controlling the big banks, controlling the oil wells, controlling the big box stores, and organizing them and having kind of a central plan for the economy. You can then create a situation where the amount of wealth goes up and society also gets wealthier at the same time. People are not getting poorer as a result of that. So everyone's getting wealthier. As long as the pie is only this big, if the pie is only this big, the only way your slice can get any bigger is by cutting into someone else's slice. And no one ever thinks that their slice of the pie is big enough. However, if you can get the understanding that the pie can just continue getting bigger, right, and there's no limit to growth, right, then at that point, you can start to have a society where people have more equal opportunities, right? And that there becomes less and less of a need to hoard, because if you're seeing your slice of the pie go bigger and bigger and bigger, why would you need to take from somebody else if you can just see it get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And that's why, for example, in China, there are many, many people. I believe until the pandemic, every day a new Chinese person was becoming a millionaire because of their socialist economy. They control the means of production. And by controlling the means of production, by planning out the economy, you can create a situation where the ability for wealth to be created can just expand. You don't have this problem of poverty being created by abundance. And that is the goal of socialism, is to eliminate that. And when you have a situation where the pie just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, as everyone starts to have enough, right, the differences between people start to then break down. Because people, there really becomes less and less of a need to take from somebody else or to hoard from somebody else, because everyone has enough. And that is the basis for, and when you talk about utopia, that's communism is the ultimate stage, right? It's like the highest stage. And that is a society with so much wealth that there's no need for a government, that there's no social hierarchies of any kind, where people can just work because they feel like working. Where people can just, there's no division between mental and physical labor. And that is when technology has advanced so far beyond anything we can imagine. I think that would probably involve us like mining asteroids. That would probably involve us being on other planets. That would definitely involve getting beyond fossil fuels. I mean, fusion energy, probably something even higher than fusion energy. Communism is something that probably won't even come for maybe 1,000 years, but is very far off in the future. But the only way communism can be achieved, a total post-scarcity society can be achieved, is if we get rid of production for profit. We have to start organizing the economy not to serve profit, so that wealth does not create poverty. And that's the problem we have under our system right now, is the wealth creates poverty. And we need to create a situation where wealth can grow and poverty doesn't grow along with it. Does that make sense?
It does. But I guess, like, what would an actionable plan look like now? So, for example, if somebody wants to know, like, how do you deal with our government, for example? Do you wait for them to die? Like, what do you do? Do you
We
guillotine
need
them?
to put forward a program. And that's the important thing, right? It's not about supporting one politician over another. It's about putting forward a program saying, we want this, and developing a program, things that you advocate that will change society. And that's why we have this 4-point plan with the Center for Political Innovation. We are for a mass infrastructure program to rebuild the country. Hire unemployed people, put them to work rebuilding the country. We are for public control of banking and the lending of money. We are for public control of our natural resources like oil and gas, and that the wealth created by the land of the United States should belong to the people. It shouldn't belong to private companies. And an economic bill of rights, like Roosevelt put forward, like the right to a job, the right to health care. And building a movement around this program, around those 4 things, right? And demanding them and going to politicians saying, are you for this? Or are you against it? Having demonstrations like the Medicare for All March, and having real program, things that people can actually see implemented. If you just say communism to people, that's something we can't even imagine. But if you put forward economic programs that people can see implemented, demanding them and building a movement around that program, right? That would eventually lead to political figures emerging who would help enact that program. And when that happens, when people are coming forward and rallying around that program, a leadership would be elected, but that leadership would have to deal with the fact that they still have our government, right? Our government isn't just the elected officials. It's the police, it's the military, it's the intelligence agencies, the FBI, the CIA, et cetera. And so that government would have to change the nature of the state, and they would have to start making a new police force that operated differently, and a new FBI, and a new military, and that they would change the nature of the state. And after on the basis of a program, we have a government that comes in and starts changing the nature of the state. That's what you call the dictatorship of the proletariat. That's the second step. And once the dictatorship of the proletariat is enacted, at that point, then a new kind of government emerges that is a government that serves the people, that is at odds with the big corporations. And that government could then create socialism. But the main thing right now is the program. We need to get the program. People have it in their heads that they just have to pick among the politicians. Am I going to vote for this guy? Am I going to vote for that one? But instead, it needs to be about the program. We need our program to be everywhere. And we need these 4 economic demands to be everywhere, to popularize these economic demands. That's kind of the vision of what needs to be done now. And that's what the Center for Political Innovation is doing, raising this 4-point plan everywhere as a way to challenge and say, why can't we do this? Why should big corporations get rich off our oil? Why should banking and private banking, run the economy? Why can't we have an economic bill of rights? And raising that and raising this program is a way to put into people's minds, building a movement around a program, I think is the way forward. And that could eventually lead to political leaders that would want to enact that program that would then have to change the nature of the state. And then if the nature of the state changed, then we could fully have a fully socialist society. So that's kind of the vision. Is that helpful?
Yes, and that leads me to one more question. Do you think that the military can be like retrofitted to do something like that? Because I've discussed this with like a couple friends, and we were wondering if, like, let's say that you have somebody who has a campaign and you would need, because the US is such a pro-military culture, you're not, something that I see in like mainstream left analysis is they just hate the military. So like you're not going to appeal to everybody by saying the military needs to go, blah blah blah. So instead, what can you make the military kind of that like jobs program that like makes jobs for people, and you can retrofit like bases to serve the populace around them rather than using them as launching points to go into Europe and all that stuff.
I think that we absolutely need to get over this hatred for the military, right? We can hate the wars that the military are sent to fight, absolutely. But no one's more anti-war than the military. I mean, these days, the military folks are the most anti-war. In fact, I mean, they're donating to like Tulsi Gabbard and Ron Paul and people like that. They're more anti-war than the population is, and the population is already very anti-war. And this attitude that we have to hate everyone who's in the military and call them a fascist or something, that needs to be completely gotten rid of. I have some stories I could tell. I don't think today is the time to tell them, but we need, and there are people in the military who love their country, right? Maybe they have some, some ideas that are wrong, and maybe they have some confusion. But there are some people who joined the military because they wanted to fight terrorism. They wanted to make sure nothing like 9/11 ever happened again. And those are the kind of people we need to appeal to. Now, as far as the military itself, the U.S. military, I don't think under the current leadership, the U.S. military would start acting that way. But never say never, right? I mean, in the Middle East, for example, it has been the military that has created socialism. In Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, it was the military. It was people within the military. They called them patriotic officers that took power and started building socialism. Now, that would be very difficult to do in the United States because our military is in an imperialist country. And the culture of the military is different. But I think there's a lot of rank and file people in the military that would really like what we have to say and are against the wars just like we are. So I hope that answers your question, Kaladin. And I thank you for coming on. And I hope we have you back on sometime soon. So thank you very much. Thank you. Yep. Very good. All right.